Hello everyone and welcome to this week's behind the scenes devlog video, and this week I'm just going to be polishing up Aquilinox and hopefully adding in a couple more features before I release to the Patreon supporters on Saturday. It is actually already Tuesday today. Yesterday I had a bit of a day off because I was working all weekend on last week's videos, so I had a little bit of time off yesterday, but I'm back to work today and I've got lots to do, so I'm going to get started. So to start the week off, I've been working on game states, and the reason for this is that the mouse now has quite a few different jobs in the game. So for example, the mouse is used to move the camera around, the mouse is used to select and move entities, it's also used to interact with the GUIs and other things like that. And I needed to make sure that the mouse can only do one of these things at once, so that you're not accidentally moving the camera around and then you accidentally select an entity, or you don't accidentally click on an entity behind a GUI when you're trying to click on something in the GUI. So I implemented mouse states or game states and made the mouse do different things in different states. So now you can see that when I'm moving the camera around, I'm not selecting any of the entities that are under the mouse, and I also can't interact with the GUI. And same thing when I've got the GUI open, I can't move the camera around and I can't accidentally click on any of the entities behind the GUI. It is 12:30 now, and for the rest of the morning I've just been going through the code and making a long list of all of the things that I need to change and update and fix before I release the game to the Patreon supporters on Friday. And some of this stuff is actually from that list that I made 2 weeks ago about the 3D picker, which I never got around to finishing. But I'm going to stop for lunch now, and I'm also going to go for a jog in the park because it's a very nice day today and I want to get outside for a bit. So it's already the end of the day and I haven't really made that much progress on the to-do list yet. But I've been reading up quite a bit about a couple of new OpenGL techniques that I want to try out. Also, I installed a new Eclipse plugin for GLSL shaders, which is pretty nice, and I've just been planning out this week's tutorial topic. It is bright and early on Wednesday morning, and today I'm just going to continue going through that list of things to do. Just been working on loading up the amount of DP that each entity gives per minute from the entities file. So if I open up the entity file for the tree here, this number here is the bonus DP that you get when you place the entity, and the second number here is the amount of DP that it gives per minute. So if I change that to 12 and then refresh my project here, when I run that, you should now be able to see that each tree gives 12 DP per minute, and as you can see, that is now the case. It is 1 o'clock now, I'm just about to stop for lunch, and this morning I got a couple more things done on that list. And I also went shopping and I bought some planting equipment for the balcony because I want to start planting some flowers and vegetables soon. So I've just been doing a bit of work in the model converter program, and I've been getting it to automatically calculate the size of the bounding box for each entity. And I'm just going to test that out now with this box entity. And I'm using a box here because the bounding box should match up exactly to the entity. So I'm going to test that out in the world here, and you can see that the mouse picking now works 100% accurately with this box, because obviously the bounding box should be exactly the same as the entity itself. And also you can see that when I pick the box up, it knows to automatically pick it up at the top, and it knows where the top is based on the size of the bounding box. It is almost 3:30 now, and I've just been doing a bit more work with diversity points and allowing the different components of an entity to change the amount of diversity points that that entity produces per minute. And I've got an example of that here. So all of these are the same tree entity, but just in different stages of growth, and you can see that the different stages produce different amounts of diversity points per minute. It's 8:20, and today I made a little bit more progress on the list, which is good, and now I'm just stopping for some dinner, which today is some chicken with some lemony sauce. It's 9 o'clock on Thursday morning now, just having a bit of breakfast, and then I'm going to get started with the next tasks in the list. So I've just found a bit of a problem in the game, which is that if you place a lot of entities very quickly, the game can sometimes crash, and this is because the mouse picker has detected an entity that doesn't actually exist. So here, it thinks that you're selecting entity 93 when there are actually only 81 entities in the world. And the reason for this, I've worked out, is that when I encode the colors based on the entity IDs, this encoding and decoding is based on the total number of entities in the world. But the decoding actually happens 2 frames after the encoding, and if the total has changed in that time, then it's going to decode the wrong index, and that's going to refer to the wrong entity, or in the worst case, an entity that doesn't even exist, which is what's causing the crash. And I've realized that this would be even more of a problem if entities are being removed from the scene within those 2 frames, and then the IDs of the entities might be changing because their ID is basically their position in the list, and this would just cause basically everything to go wrong. So I need to rethink this a little bit. So I think that the way I'm going to fix the problem is to use a hash map instead of a list, and then each entity can have its own unique ID assigned to it when it's added to the world, and then that ID won't ever change. But I'm not going to do that now. I've made a note for myself to do that next week. So at the moment I'm just continuing on through the list, and also I've just tidied up the main class, because if you've ever seen my code, the main class was a bit of a mess, but it's now nice and tidy. It is 7:30 in the evening now, and this afternoon I have been ploughing my way through this list, as you can see, and I've got not too much left to do now. Mainly I've just been working on the GUIs and the different mouse events and different game states again, and the last thing that I've just been working on now was getting this pop-up window to not have to close every time when you change tabs. So previously you always had to close this tab before you could open this one. But now you can just switch between the 2 and it knows not to close, but instead to just change the content in the panel. And also, when you bring up the pause menu, it automatically closes the currently open tab. So I'm just stopping for some dinner now, and I didn't really feel like cooking today, so I've got a rather unappetizing looking pile of spinach and mushrooms. It is quite late in the evening now, it's about 11 o'clock, but just to finish off the day I added the option for buttons to have keyboard shortcuts. So now I've added one for the biome identification button, so when I press the B key it now opens up the biome identification mode, and when I let go of the B key it closes it again, so I don't always have to go up and click the button when I want to identify biomes. I can now just hold down the B key quickly if I want to quickly see what a biome is. Good morning everyone, it is a lovely sunny Friday morning here in Berlin, and today I'm hopefully going to be finally finishing off that list. This morning I've been doing some work on properly formatting the text in these entity info GUIs, because previously I was just putting a load of spaces between the name and the value, which is obviously not a very good way of doing it. So now I've actually implemented a proper way for text to be right aligned, so that I can right align all of those values and they all line up nicely now. On to the next task in the list now, and that is to create a new control screen, because a lot of the controls have changed since the last release of Equilinox, so I'm just creating a new one here in GIMP. Time for a bit of lunch now, and for the rest of the morning I've just been adding a few things to the selective breeding mechanic so that it can actually be used when I release the game to the Patreon supporters tomorrow. This afternoon I've been doing a bit of work on the entity info GUIs so that their size changes to match the amount of information that they're displaying. And I also added a new bounce power characteristic to the sheep, and this characteristic can be passed on in the breeding process. So you can see here that all of these sheep have been bred to have very low bounce powers, so they hardly bounce at all. So just for the Patreon release tomorrow, I've temporarily added this breeding option to the entity GUIs, and by turning this on, it allows that sheep to start reproducing, and that sheep will now reproduce once every about 5 seconds for the rest of its lifetime. So this allows you to literally selectively breed whatever type of sheep you want to. Also, I've found that clicking these buttons at the moment is kind of tricky because of the bouncing, so I think I'm going to stop these GUIs from bouncing with the sheep. So just to give you a quick example of this selective breeding process, for the last 2 minutes I've just been turning on the breeding for any sheep with a high bounce power and any sheep that are slightly greener than the other sheep, and after a couple of minutes that has left me with a population of sheep which are all green and all have very high bounces. It is getting quite late in the evening now, but I've still got a couple of things on the list that I want to finish off today, and I've just been working on saving the diversity points count when you save the game. So you can see here that if I load up a new world, it will actually also load up the number of diversity points that I had when I last saved that world. Very nearly finished off the list now, just a couple more things to do, but at the moment I'm working on this month's release notes for the Patreon release tomorrow. So to finish off the day, I've just been trying out a couple of new mechanics with the biomes. So the sheep that live in grass biomes will actually no longer die at all. So you can see that this one has lived for a very long time. But marsh biomes will actually cause sheep to age a lot quicker. And so sheep living in marsh biomes will die very quickly. And this is just a temporary thing to play around with. It's not actually going to be part of the game. So it is 12 o'clock on Saturday. This morning I've just been editing together this week's behind the scenes devlog video, and I haven't really got much else to do this week apart from the tutorial that I need to do tomorrow. So yeah, it's been a pretty good week. I've got quite a lot done, pretty much finished off this list, which is good, but I've actually already started the next list for next week, so I look forward to starting work on that. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching this video. Do subscribe if you haven't already. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you all next time.